Hello, this is Lisalee and welcome to my channel. So today we're doing not a pick a card reading. I wanted to do one of our series readings. It's been kind of a while. The pick a card readings are fun. I like them, but I really do like to get into like the theological issues and, you know, philosophical issues and really pick at things. And those of you who have been following me a while know that I did the Deities series. And if you're really following me, you know that like I left off the deity series with like one last Jesus episode like undone. And mainly because I'm still working with Jesus actually. Like he's on like Jesus is on a Course in Miracles kick, and that book will take me years to read. If anyone's like read the whole thing, let me know. I can't, this is a whole thing. But what I did want to do today, because I have been working with Jesus still, and it's still going on, I'll finish this reading because we're still talking a lot, is I wanted to look at the tricky, hard, like philosophical, theological question of like, who is God for everyone? Like, who is this? Like, who are gods? Like, what is the nature of, you know, source? And it's a reading that is like a tall order, but I feel it's fine because I've had these debates with Jesus where my biggest contention with Jesus is that he will bring healing and his anointing anywhere his name is used. But like his name is used some places where I'm like, what are you doing? You know, like not everyone, it's almost like there's this avenue for Jesus's name to be used in vain, and Jesus is like, no. When anybody like tries to use my name to do something that is not in alignment with me, it's just like, it's like undone immediately. It evaporates. He's like, it's when they don't use my name, it's when they're not using my name that some of that magic can take hold. So basically, like, there's been this thing about anointing and magic and power and the difference between working with Jesus and other deities. Deities get their power in relationship to you from your belief in them. I mean, they have their power in their own right, but they get power in relationship to you based on your belief in them. So gods by consensus is a really interesting thing where, you know, working with deities, you're going to have not quite the dynamic that you would have with like, say, a monotheistic God, where there's a lot of human like faith power already propping up its stories. It's not the same experience, you know, because there's not a consensus belief in the gods anymore, you know, and the consensus belief where it is with some really funky stuff. So Jesus will bring his anointing to anything, and what I'm asking him to bring his anointing to now, since I think he kind of like lends a lot of power to places where dogma is pretty nasty, I want Jesus to come in and sort of help us with this a little bit, because I feel that I'm just gonna listen for like 1 second. I keep on saying to Jesus, because he's like, I'm not like, he's saying it's my Father who gives me, you know, it's my Father, it's within, it's the kingdom of heaven within, and it's not the false gods that, you know, might be associated with people who use my name. So I kept on being like, well, who is your dad then? Like, introduce me. Like, who is your father? Like, who do you connect to? And he basically conveyed to me that we all connect to our creators, basically, and that our creators aren't always the same. But Jesus kind of talks about God like it's a substance. It's interesting. Like it's an intelligent substance. That's how Jesus kind of phrases it, or, you know, sort of explains it. So we're going to look at that. So I'm asking Jesus to sort of like, okay, fine. So you're not representing the false God that uses your name. So who are you? And you're representing the Father and the connection of each individual to their God. We need a roadmap, you know, and the Course in Miracles, it's like really long. A lot of repeating. I'm trying to be respectful. I am. The Course in Miracles is actually kind of cool if you can read it. Like, it's good. It works. I am challenged by the length, and I read really long, really difficult books. So that's sort of where I'm at with that. I'm trying. I'm going to get through it. But what Jesus is bringing through is, whenever I talk to him about God, is this idea of God as a substance. So when we did the Athena reading, I think this came up in the Mary Magdalene reading too, we were kind of talking about how like demonic energies, like there's the infernal divine, again, that's an ecosystem of its own. And then there are like demons, which, you know, without thought forms attached to them, are just energies that plug into like energy and expand with the like energy. It's not intelligent. It's like, it's not an intelligent energy. So you can kind of, once you know its name, you can just tell it to go away. It doesn't have its own intelligence. It only has like the structure of the intelligence that projects on it. So in a similar way, and this is like really, really interesting, Jesus keeps on trying to explain to me something about the substance of God. God the Father, God within, is like a substance. And so we're going to get into it. We're going to do this like big heady, I hope it makes sense to those of you that are like finding me and don't like know the nature of my work. It gets heady. It gets heady in here. So let's take a look. Let's pull these cards out. The power of love. It's that song. Can't sing it. I hope you've all been doing well. I've been trying to figure out, working with Jesus has sort of taken me out of the deity interview sort of space. So I've been trying to find a way to like do things that interest me as much as I think they might be helpful to you. So I haven't been having as much fun, but this is going to be a fun reading. I love this already. So let's move this out of the way. I'm going to kind of pull cards as we go along, but this is already cool. Let's see. I'm like the worst. I drive people crazy by not having that be straight. Okay. So when we think about what I've got in front of me is really, 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 really interesting. And I'm getting so excited. But we're going to start with emergence here. And we're going to start with synergy and emergence. Okay. So what we're talking, Jesus has been like, God is a substance. I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, God is an intelligent substance. And that kind of threw me because, so I understand the substance of different energies, you know, that are unintelligent and they just take on the intelligence of that which makes use of it. And so God is kind of like that. It's sort of like something that you plug into. And I'm kind of bringing through as like Jesus would explain it. There's no right answer in terms of like the story around God. That's why Jesus is like, I'll be wherever my name is. Like, I don't care what the story is that's attached to it. Like, my anointing is its own thing. It's an undoing. It works its magic. And I don't care about anything else. That's what I'm here. I'm here to heal. I mean, I just heal. Don't, you know? And so in this way, Jesus has like the substance. So when we think about Christ consciousness and we think about the anointing that we can find in like consensuses of people using Jesus's name, like there is this way in which Jesus kind of really figured out how to interact with the substance of God's intelligence. And so the substance of God is like a shapeshifter, and it will become whatever God, like it doesn't become whatever God, but in the same way that I said that like gods are created by consensus and belief, like the belief consensus is what creates the power that God then holds. And energetically, like it's like where the attention goes is like, that's what it can then influence us. It's really powerful. And so when you think about the substance of God as being like in relationship to the faith that we put in stories that animate them, I hope this is easy to follow. So God is the faith that is put in the stories that animate the stories in a certain kind of a way, meaning one size fits all. But it's always going to be a different experience, like depending on how much belief there actually is. It's such an interactive process. But that Christ consciousness and Jesus, like God, as like plugging on the God inside is how Jesus keeps on explaining it. This actually came up in someone's reading. It was really amazing. But so if you're that person, like I would never ever talk about someone's reading. I have like a relationship to readings where I treat it like confidential, like a therapist would treat it confidential. It's not therapy. It's not that kind of mental health care. It's spiritual health care. But I do have like a confidentiality thing. But someone's reading did kind of show like where I first kind of gained a glimpse of like what Jesus might have meant by like the inside God, because Jesus has been talking about the inside God for a while, and I'm like, how about like the out, like what, you know, like it made sense and then it didn't. I kind of misunderstood it. But this substance of God, which is within all of us, but like operates from like a God's eye view and from a God's perspective, and the God in the world based on a consensus, and will take any form it is given that is in alignment with its purpose, right? Really interesting. Any form means any story that it's given that is in alignment with its purpose. Its purpose is healing and enlightening and awakening. But that Jesus said that in order to have this be something that is coherent and that you can actually sort of benefit from, and it wants this, there's a desire for this reciprocal kind of relationship with the God within. And when Jesus said one true God, he was actually talking about the God within, and not like the God of the Pharisees. But the God of the Pharisees, upon the losing battle, decided, and this is an interesting thing that Jesus kind of looks at it, upon the losing battle decided to co-opt, you know, use of the name. But that's a whole different thing. But basically what we're looking at here when we think about Taurus, your beliefs, the costs of, use the most direct way, you know, this combination of like word prompts, you know, with that, what it is to be in like the strength of a comfort, you know. Spirituality right now, like every time you come up with a spiritual concept, reality is like, gotcha. Like this is really like, you know, God will protect me, shitty thing happening. You know what I mean? And like basically like every single time there's a new concept of being able to feel that there's these things to be putting faith in, and they're just, you know, there's a lot of energy out there that would like very much to take your devotion, and everything's a kind of a shapeshifter in a certain kind of a way. So like your beliefs and what they cost you, and the most direct route to God is kind of what Jesus is talking about when he says one true God. Yes, there are deities. Yes, they have their own selves and they're outright, but without the investment of your belief in relationship to you, there's not the power. And like conversely, if in relationship to you, monotheism is where the power is, even when you denounce the dogma still has a way of finding it, like the thought forms are animated by like all kinds of stuff, and it still finds its way back to you. So whatever you like actually believe in has a big effect on what costs you have in life as a result. It's so interesting. And so when we're interacting with the substance of God, and Jesus is saying the most direct way to plug into the substance of God that is already within you to actually make that connection, because I've been like, Jesus, tell me in steps, how do you make the connection? And he was saying is to understand that substance of God that is within you is intelligent. It has an intelligence. And that's like super, I don't know how like wildly esoteric it is. So I'm actually going to get some cards so we can explain a little bit more what that means. This might be like a really long reading. Again, I always do that. So I hope you get some water, and I always would take notes too if I were you. I come back to these readings after, because while I'm channeling, I don't retain anything, and definitely take notes. So I'm looking at this way in which, so we kind of like, there's a way in which we don't make our gods, we furnish them with power. The stories are what are given in the way of divine inspiration, in the same way the Bible is like the story is given through divine inspiration. Every God personified is given through divine inspiration by the story that is told about it, or experience that creates the story. One or the other, depends how ancient you are. But we're ultimately, the substance of God is the substance of faith within us that we place all over the place. But with the Magician card, spirituality, trusting your psychic knowledge of, resulting from the indecision of or about, in terms of this Pisces energy. When we talk about the magician, like at its finest is when you learn how to ride a bike, you never forget it. Even if like the first couple times back on a bike again are like wobbly weird, you're still able to like balance miraculously, like in thin air as you move forward. How do you not forget how to find your balance? It's something about discovering your center of gravity, and it never goes away. So like, and the bicycles like are great. This is a good one in terms of like being able to make this clear. So like riding a bike. So Jesus is sort of showing me very much like, you know, when it comes to where you want to get with your spirituality, it's not about a million like ritual is the container, you know, for your belief. It has a purpose, but it's not about like, Jesus really cracked the code on being able to like be fully protected, fully knowing like all the stuff and walking without any kind of a fear, because Jesus understood his power in terms of being able to affect reality. And that wasn't his power. It was the power that he had discovered in co-creation with the intelligence of the substance of God within. It's a mouthful of a way of saying that once you get this, you don't really need the trappings of story too much, and you don't really need the containers too much. There's a really cool thing that happens where like freed from process, you're able to really just bring God into the world, make God real in the world. You're the conveyor belt of the God substance, and it comes through what you make meaning of and place your faith in and like utilize and like then like put into the world. It's really, really interesting. And so what Jesus has always said in terms of like, you know, one true God is yeah, actually, you know, you connecting with your creator, that which you created you. You're an extension of your creator. This is what Jesus meant by intelligence. And I'm going to try not to, I'm going to want to interrupt the channel, but I kind of want to try to form it a little bit. So it's almost like we want to understand that our beliefs, that we kind of create the power of the God that we're serving, and the God that we are, that wants to help us grow and that we want to interact with. We create the relationship, we create the dynamic, and we give it all its power. By creating the dynamic, like again, like the boundaries that are built in with free will have a lot to do with like limitations that we impose that we're not really always aware of. And there's a lot that you can get from working with gods that are external to you. Absolutely. I've been doing it. That's deity work. But they are going to feel different and have a different weight of authority and a different level of efficacy, you know, depending on how much belief you give them to work with. And that's a really tricky thing, you know, when there's not already a consensus belief out there that empowers them. So you can be working with all kinds of, it's a whole process. It can be a whole process. But ultimately, you know, when you connect to that God within, that is you connecting to your creator. And that's where you can, like, that's where the magic comes flowing through you. That's how you co-create, but it has to be an intelligent connection. And so Jesus keeps saying, yeah, well, my Father is the substance of God within, wherein I place my attention and my faith by interacting with its intelligence, knowing it has an intelligence, and it becomes effortless. It's that riding a bike. So once you get your center of gravity learning to ride a bike, you never lose your center of gravity learning how to ride a bike. And once you learn how to connect with the God within and get and interact with the co-creation power process, you never lose that center of gravity, and you never need the extraneous stuff around like learning, because you're connecting with your creator. And it's really not about identifying whether or not a creator is like the true God. It's about identifying your true God within through that experience of interacting with the intelligence of your highest self. And so it is a spirituality that is very much like chosen and crafted. But what Jesus wants you to know is that it's not your intelligence. It's first of all, you pull it from like the middle gut. And this is an interesting thing for me. Like, I'm such a crown chakra person, and I got the heart chakra going on a little bit, but I find that harder to work with. Honestly, it's like not my best. Maybe one day. We'll see. But I have been sort of like, once I identified like the spot, and this is where that girl reading, that somebody's reading comes through, like this person's reading, I'm not talking about the reading, no confidentiality, I hope, at all. But there's this way in which, you know, there was this notion of connecting with the source within, the God within, like, what does it mean? And so I was kind of feeling around for it. And honestly, like, I know my body in relationship to spiritual energy really, 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 really well. And I'll tell you, so there's like a spot, like if I could show you, I would, but I'm like literally in my pajamas. if your heart is in the middle of your chest, then it's right below, behind, like almost in the sacral chakra, but like under kind of a way. There's actually like a seat of the soul, it seems. There's something that connects to this that almost feels like a connection, like a spot. So, and Jesus has been kind, and I've been really kind of working with this, and Jesus has been kind of showing me, but it's, and I'm being shown like the baby with the umbilical cord. So sacral chakra, but like heart chakra too. Really cool spot. The fusing there is really interesting. So anyway, Jesus is sort of showing me that like there is this connection, the power of investment, gambles, and other games. Your creation's 5th house energy with the chariot card. How do you move your power forward and into the world in a way that is like miracles and active and godlike substance? Here's where we all get to be little gods, and here's where we're all actually the Messiah, but it really is contingent upon us plugging in with the power of love, but like love being the substance of God, and we have a hard time with like God as love, because we don't really, love is a mess, and the definition of love is a mess, and oh my gosh, that's a whole series that maybe we'll do. But basically Jesus is showing me that and I guess this is the last Jesus reading. Well, this is like, we'll just call it, this is bringing the substance of God. Connecting with the substance of God is not naming your God the one and only. And it's not because and you don't need to know if there's only one. You don't need to know anything. All you need to know is this is my love. This is what loves me the most. And this loves me the most because it knows me the most, because it made me. When we think about the love of a parent to its child, it's your creator watches this is where Jesus is like, this is an intelligence. This creator watches every minute of your life. It watches when you're sleeping. It watches the story as it unfolds around you. It watches your choices and your interactions, and it loves you. It created you. You are like reflecting. It's like having a child. Honestly, that's why Jesus called him Father. That's what Jesus connected with, was exactly my creator, what made me, what wanted me to be in the world, what wanted me. That is your most powerful God. And that is the God that you should be connecting with, is what created you because it wanted you. And whether or not it wanted you to have the life that you're having or had, we're going to ask that question. But what it wanted you to be able to do was take its power into the world and use it and enact like God. Bringing God into the world is supposed to be, you're the vehicle. And as soon as we figure this out, we change the world, when we all know that. And so this is kind of cool. I love this like the most, you know what I mean? So when we, so deity work is great. I love it, you know, and the deities are incredible. And yeah, can you work with a deity at this level? I'm sure that you probably could. I think it would be a really interesting process. But the fastest way, I'm going to put my 2 cents in. I like to work, like at this point, now that it's the Magician card. Once you get that center of gravity, once you get that balance, you do not really seek to connect with other gods in this way. It's just the way that it is. But that doesn't mean you can't. And that doesn't mean that you should be afraid to. They all have something really valuable to offer. And there's like, these are teachers. That's what they are at their most powerful. It's like these incredible mentors and teachers. That's what the deities are. But the God within is basically like when you're at the level where you're ready to bring God and your creator into the world so that your creator can interact through you, which is the ultimate goal. And that's like merging with your higher self. That's what Jesus is talking about in terms of finding God. And God the Father, that's God the Creator. So I need a drink of water and take a deep breath. And then we're going to look at, so taking this power, walking on water, that's his trick. And it's not even a trick. It's just like once you get that center of gravity and begin to co-create with that intelligence, and that intelligence begins to like operate through you, then it's walking on water. That's what we're talking about over here. Try it, because I want to see you walk on water. Now we have the 10, like this is really interesting. I'm going to say every time I tell you that it's 10 of coins, 10 of wands. This deck is awesome. And I guess it's I'm not advertising anything ever. I wish I was. D&D. It's the like Dungeons and Dragons tarot cards. That's what these are. But why do I love them? As a if you're an experienced reader, the minor arcana not having signifiers allows for a synergy. We got the synergy card over here of all of the sort of like, so this is a synergy between wands and pentacles with just like a touch of the swords here. Like, this is awesome the way this happens. But ultimately, like, this is a really interesting card because I'm being shown, and this is one of these moments. I'm in this moment right now. What the fuck is his name? Sorry for cursing. Yell the Buff or something like that. Ouch. So I don't like to use that name, and that's probably why I can't even say it. The reason I don't like to use that name is because that is an energy that I know really well. And I know really well, you know, I was always psychic my whole life. But I like was born into like the household of fundamentalist Christian, like to the extreme with my mom. We're talking like casting out demons, you know, praying in tongues, like harassing people at the supermarket, prophetic words, like randomly. This was like that was what I grew up with on my mom's side. And then on my dad's side, you've got Roman Catholicism, like all the way like to the like end of time. So we have like this real, and they're both like as religious. My tarot card reading is like not I'm not their favorite child. That's okay. Bottom line is, I know this God. I know this God well. I don't like this God. And if you read the Gnostic Gospels, you're going to see a story where this world is being held hostage by a God that was created and cast away out of the mother's embarrassment, really. And so the creator of this God didn't want, I guess it was like I really don't know. I actually haven't read it too. I mean, I know it, like I grazed it at some point, but this is the God of that Christianity. It has a lot of power, you know, and at the moment we're in a fight, you know, with our country and this energy. And that's a fundamentalist, controlling energy. And it's very well established. And it does seem kind of omnipotent, and to the effect that like by consensus we create our gods. And in consensus, when we create our gods outside of ourselves, we're in danger of creating a God that doesn't have our best interest in mind, because gods are agended. They always are. And to ensure that you're connecting with a God whose agenda is in your best interest, you connect with your parent, you connect with your creator God, and that's connecting with the God within. And so we have to de-invest from the God without, and that's really difficult because it's actually built into our unconscious minds at this point. There's an epigenetic sort of imprint. Like this energy has been going at it with a purpose and a mission and a reason, and holy crap, you trace it. Monotheism, Saturn is like, it's this really interesting thing. So anyway, so this is this energy. Patiently, what you want, get what you need. And we're looking, and those are the word prompts around the second house and this concept of the second house. So there is a whole thing about like religious trauma here, and a whole thing about how religious trauma has affected the body, and a whole thing about how the religious trauma enforces its will through the collective unconsciousness based on the level of people in agreement that this is where the power goes and that this is the one true. And so like when we say shift in consciousness, and when we say like awakening, elevating, you know, densities, a lot of what we're talking about is divesting what is being divested in the power of this particular God with its agenda, and sort of how like the power structure, like as people stop like holding up that power structure and believing in that power structure, as they divest their energy from that power structure, as they take their attention away from it, it's the structures that it is then creating as above, so without, like, start to crumble. And so as the preponderance of people that believe in this God as the one God change, like, externally we see that change. So it's really hard for us to be in the world but not of it. And you are subject to this at this point. Jesus is saying that there's a reason I was crucified, and it wasn't because, like, it pleaseth my Father to watch me, like, writhing on a cross. Like, that was not what it was about. Jesus is saying I was crucified because I was subject to the laws to the power structure of this world, and this power structure is this guy. At the moment, there seems to be two main influences. One is from Saturn, and one is this. So I'm just trying to, like, sit for a minute and see. I gotta, like, recalibrate, because that was, I don't like this energy. I don't, this thing, I have a history of, like, having problems with that energy. So, because this energy has had it out for me, but that's, like, personal. I don't bring my personal things. So this 10 of Swords here, and again, without the minor arcana being signified, it's more like a 10 of Swords from, like, a very unique position, where this is somebody who has figured out how to connect to the God within. They're in color, they're in full form, they're three-dimensional, they have substance. All of this shadowy stuff around, this is what we're talking about when we're talking about the structure of the world that has the power over us at this moment, because there's all this faith being invested in it. And people trying to uphold it. Basically, it's like people are upholding the crappy system, and they have faith in the crappy system. And when you look at the, like, the red and the blue, what you're really looking at is, like, uphold the crappy system, and people who are like, we are divesting in we don't want your God. We don't like this situation. We're taking our power back. And this is all about what it means to connect to that source energy. That, like, when anyone who realized, like, I don't like this, I'm not cool with this vibe, it's because of the small voice within that got louder and louder. Hold on, I have to cough. I've been, like, if we're being honest, no, we're not being honest. Let me just wait, because I think I have a cough again. Am I gonna cough again? There we go. That's the last cough, hopefully. This 10 of Swords energy. An unusual example of a different way of looking at an unexpected change. When we start connecting with this inner power, that magician energy of plugging in, this is a little bit of a process, because we are told, like, all the forces of this energy to pay attention to outside of us, and the boogeyman and the powerlessness, and to not look ever into what we are actually the most powerful connecting to. And so, like, it's like, yeah, this is all powerful, but look, it's like 2 seconds you look in and this becomes powerless in a way. Because Jesus is saying, like, once you are plugged all the way in, once you're plugged all the way in, you no longer care. This thing can threaten your life, and you're like, good, go ahead. I know my Father. We're cool. You do whatever you want. There's this, like, center of gravity. There's this power within it, which is why Jesus is like, people took my message, like, seriously, because I would preach the thing that was illegal to say out loud right in front of the guard holding the spear. And so people were like, what is this guy saying? They heard me, and they were able to engage with the message because I wasn't afraid. And I wasn't afraid because I knew who my Father was. You know, did that mean that he was still subject to the structures that had the power, that people had invested the power and put the power in? But he wasn't, like, owned and controlled, and he had his magic, and he was wielding it and breaking every structure as he walked, wielding it. And so Jesus is saying, like, you know, his message was so that everyone would tap into that creator inside God power, the substance of God that is intelligent, and use it, bring it into the world like he did. And then this thing just collapses and there's no problems in a certain sense. You know, there's a lot that goes into it. And so this is the Star card, this healing, this elevation, this cooperation in terms of where we are all in consensus with our beliefs in the 7th house, you know, our partners, our relationships too. So Jesus is saying when we create this partnership with the God within, when we actually get that hand, there's a card that I'm like seeing where like, but when the hands clasp, then we have access to our ancestral magic, which comes from like right from that creator. And we get to wield it. We get to bring it in the world in co-creation. So where we're going to shift right now, let's see, it's the half an hour in. I want to move into more about like what it means, like the instructions for us in terms of like, well, okay, great, this sounds lovely. Where do we flip the switch? Like, where do we plug it in? Like, I told you that there's a feeling. I have like a place where I can kind of get at it. It's physical a little bit, you know, it's definitely spiritual, but in terms of like having a sense of where your chakras are and like what they feel like, there is like energetically a thing. But that's not the only way there. Basically, we're going to talk about how to get there though, because we need more than a little bit of, we need more than just the broad kind of a picture. So I'm actually going to take a break and come right back. Hello, this is Lisalee and welcome to my channel. So I'm coming back after my break. This is going to be a series because there's so much to explain here. So where we're going to start, and we left off with God as a substance, an intelligent substance that you get access to within and you bring in co-creation into the world through you. And so basically this whole series is about asking Jesus, like, well, how like very specifically do you connect with this energy? Like, we get that it changes everything. Oh, interesting. Okay, let's take a look. So basically, like, you know, the story that you put with it, okay, here we go, is less important, right, than, okay, let me actually plug in because I'm trying to listen and talk at the same time, and that's like bad channeling for me. I want to do good channeling. So what I'm being shown about this is it's a somatic thing. So how do you know that you're connecting with the inner God that's like your creator and something that is a trickster, or like something that is there to teach you? Like, Jesus is like less in the way of like trickster, more in the way of like everything has a lesson, or like is pointing you in the direction of connecting with this. And so how do you know? It's like a somatic experience. If it brings peace and power, that's connecting with your inner God. If it's exhausting, frightening, like there's a lot of this, I think, you know, we have to sort of strip away like dogma that isn't true, that like we're trained, like, do not test the Lord thy God. No, you can, if it makes you feel better to connect with your inner, like that inner God, and say like, I actually need you to show me like 5 red things before noon, because I actually like evidential, you know, revelation, you know what I mean? Like there's this way in which we have a lot of rules about how we can and cannot access God that we have to sort of strip away. And there are going to be times when we access what we think is the substance of God, or we feel the substance of God, you know, through what somebody else is bringing into the world, because it's substance separate from story. And I know this is complicated. I just hope it's coherent. Everyone brings God into the world in a slightly different way. They're working in co-creation with their creator. And so this notion that God's supposed to look the same or be the same or be or have some uniform shape and size is nonsense. But the truth of what we bring into the world when we co-create with God and is accessing that power, embodying that power and that wisdom, and actually like channeling through that creation, but it comes through like your expression. And so the way that we know that we are like kind of with the right energy is it draining you or is it giving you life? Is it like you have to sort of have a somatic experience of peace and power, and you also, in concert with actually seeing it be effective, wherever, like, you know, how do I put this? Because Jesus is sort of showing me, like, there, of course, there's always going to be competing energies with this Five of Wands. You know, the competing energies are absolutely everywhere. You've got the power structure that is actually something to reckon with, especially if it has it out for you. Because then you're really actively having to like deal with something that is empowered from outside of you with the power within. And it's not a problem of whether or not you have the power within. It's a problem of like access. And it's like a wobbly kind of thing. And so there's going to be competing energies, and there are going to be things that are outside of you that have some amount of the substance of God, you know, that you're meant to experience and learn from and interact with. But ultimately, you're only going to find that power and that purpose and that relationship. You're only going to find that relationship. You can experience the substance of God through others and with others. Like, absolutely, it happens all the time. You know, it's like, it's that love that is brought into connections. But, and you can experience it with people of different belief systems. Like, we know what it is. We know that feeling, that thing that comes in when people are like bringing their divinity. And it doesn't, and again, when we know that we don't need it to fit a box or a shape, and that everybody actually does create something a tiny little bit different, because it's in co-creation. What we really need to understand in terms of like the pivotal thing is, like, first of all, you're wanting to direct your energy inside. And secondly, you're listening. It's a divine feminine energy of reception. You're going to have the competing energies, but the way that it moves, the way this energy moves within you, and the way that it moves at, like, the way that you're able to move it in the world is going to be able to tell you whether or not it's the real deal or something that you're learning. And every time you interact with a counterfeit sort of a thing, it's because you are learning that's counterfeit, why it's counterfeit, and that it enables you, and this is your animal self, to be able to tell everybody. You know what I mean? It's like the part of us that like experiences these things for the collective is like, you know, sometimes we'll walk down the wrong road so that we can be able to turn around on our way back and be like, yo, wrong direction. This is what I found out, you know? And so there's this way where you don't want to be antagonistic with opposition. Well, and Jesus is sort of saying that, you know, in terms of like they crucified him and that was horrible. There's something about, like, for him, bringing God in through his connection to his Father was a rebellious process. You know, it was co-creating in rebellion, you know, and bringing truth and then like playing with the power structure in a certain kind of way. That was Jesus's co-creation of bringing God into the world. That was his way of doing it. And so he kind of had it, he had an understanding that he was going to look at death and say, you don't have any control over me. I belong to my Father. I don't have to adhere to your threats. It was the only way, you know, to overcome the way that the power structure had established itself at that point. And was establishing itself, you know, and with this Justice card and what it means to connect to this inner energy. A lot of our messaging with God is like, you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong. You're in trouble. There's punishment. But when we take that away and we understand that you're connecting with your actual, and this is, Jesus is really clear about this, you're connecting with your actual parent, not your parent like that sucks in the world, or not your parent because your parent is exhausted, and, you know, like you are connecting with the thing that wanted you to be born so that it could have you in its life forever. It wanted to create you so that it could always be a part of your experience. It did choose the hairs on your head, and it did work in dark, configuring this beautiful ensemble of what you became, and working in co-creation, like with your ascended ancestors and like your whole family and soul tribe. Like, your creation was never an accident to create life from like that early place, like where you're creating something of nothing. We're not talking about the loop. Is the most intentional thing in the world. So your creation was the most intentional thing in the world. your incarnation was similarly intentional in terms of you and your creator co-creating before each life to try and get you closer to home and farther away from what had sort of taken you from this connection in the first place. But this is something that is intelligent. It has its own intelligence, and it is intelligent of every day of your life. It is intelligent of every experience that you've ever had. And any single time you find that comfort and that growth and that inspiration, you're tapping into that center of gravity that is the God within. And that's your creator, and that's unique to you. And the way that you express and experience who that creator is unique to you. And the way you bring that creator into the world, the way you bring God into the world is unique to you. And so you don't need it to look a certain way. Thinking it needs to look a certain way, thinking religion needs to look a certain way, and belief and spirituality needs to look a certain way and follow certain rules. That's not, we want to take that away and replace it with you connect with and receive God. And how you choose to express the reception and interpret the reception is going to be unique to you, unique to your meaning making, and how you bring it into the world is going to be as how you express it. And once it's in the world, it has its own kind of life of its own in a way. And so there's just like extending and extending and extending of the substance of God. And it's supposed to be really diverse, because that's what expansion is about. It's not a homogeneous spilling the water on the wood floor. You know, it's more like a gathering into a flock and then moving in concert. The consensus isn't, it's not that we're going to lack a consensus on God. It's that we're going to discover God is the substance that moves between us and with us and through us, but ultimately in co-creation with us, and is able to experience through and with us too. You are never alone, ever. And you're given all kinds of guides that are outside of you that are trying to get you back to being able to connect with this spot. And it's a process. And sometimes you're not ready to connect with the spot. Sometimes you still have a lot to learn from the external stuff. And there's external mentors and teachers out there, but ultimately you're only going to do so much learning. A lot of you have been feeling like your God's all just like abandoned you the last couple of months. But you're really like the front runners, all of you, like of being able to get this knowledge on how to connect. Because this is like, again, bringing God into the world is no small function. And that's what we're being tasked with. And so when we think about this, that's a chariot. Bringing God into the world, this is this chariot thing. When your mirroring is your creator, boom. That's the co-creation. That's really interesting too. And then you like literally personify God in the world. And so we do start out like little children. Like Jesus, like a lot of what Jesus has said is absolutely his experience with his Father, like, and the kingdom of heaven just generally. It's inside. You look it in. You're connecting to the God within. You're connecting to your creator. And so it is your, like, in a sense, you could call this your higher self. But Jesus is like, the cool thing about a higher self and a creator is that you have siblings, you know? So like there are lots of you that have a real concentration of Christ consciousness energy as your creator. And that's, and your each individuals are going to express that differently. But you have family and soul tribe, and that's sort of the kingdom of heaven, that you have siblings, you know, and there aren't just one God. Like that's ridiculous. And Jesus is saying like, that's not what he meant. He meant your one true God is not external. It is the kingdom of God is what you bring into the earth, like in co-creation with that experience of connecting. It's so hard to explain, but ultimately, like, there is kind of a source, one true God, but it doesn't have to be the same for everyone. And it's a process of discovery. It's not like it tells you its name. You don't see it and follow after it. It reveals itself to you. It is divine feminine in nature. Like this part of you has a divine feminine aspect. It's the receiving. And so, you know, whenever there's like this agency, like you may want to work with Hecate and you may want to work with Odin and you know, because they each have really incredible things to bring through. Like every single one of those deities I worked with was incredible. But when you start to connect with your creator and you bring that unique expression of God through you as you were designed to, you first have to come like a child, like like this moment where you're going to your higher self and you're like, pick me up. Tell me about yourself. Like, yeah, so Jesus is saying, like, the process of discovery of your own, like, one true God. First of all, you're going to test it against how you feel interacting with it. If you're uneasy, if you don't feel good, you have to remember this is the creator that wanted you and wants you forever and will never stop chasing you down. And there is no punishment, and there's no hell. There's just, like, getting you back in touch again and putting you in alignment with your purpose, which is to bring God into the world through your expression. We're up against a lot in terms of opposition to this, like, it's self-actualization, but it's God-actualization as well. And I'm looking at the time and I'm taking a breath and I want to, like, reorient, because where we are with the concept of God right now all the way is like this 8 of Swords. So, okay, fine. Connecting with the substance within. Now let's talk about, like, this is the structures on the outside, and this is a battle. This is like a whole nightmare of a thing to deal with, because with the 3 of Wands, like, no matter how many times you, like, go within, have a spiritual experience, connect with the divine, it is a battle to bring it through you. It's a battle to bring anything out through you. Like, think about a creative process. You have an idea for a book, like, okay, like, sit down. Like, it's really hard to create and bring that through you. There's often, like, not a lot of power behind it. Your power is constantly being depleted and your attention is constantly being forced. Where the attention goes, the energy flows. Think about how much of your attention is being taken from you by design from external structures. They're just designed to deplete you. They're designed to trick you into systems of depletion. And that's because this power is this is a structure that is looking for your power, looking for your attention, looking for your obedience, looking for you to uphold its structure by your faith, even if it's like a horrible faith, you know, like a faith in, like, a system that is abusive. This is like not. So it's a very conscious effort to look within, because the without is knocking on the door, and it's loud and it's happening all the time. And so, you know, to undermine the structure, you know, that kind of like has us, first of all, we have to understand we want to, yeah, Jesus is, I kind of lost the channel, but Jesus is sort of steering me back. When we come to this God within, like a child, basically we're saying, like, mommy, pick me up. What do you smell like? Like, what does your hair feel like? I'm going to fall asleep on you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is a relationship. This is a process, but it kind of takes time and attention, and knowing that you're loved, and knowing that you're wanted, and knowing that your attention towards it is needed, but it's never going to force you to look over at it. It's never going to knock at your door. It's never going to act like it's never going to act like this external force that says, give me, feed me. It wants you. It's almost like your job to love yourself enough and to believe in your in like the substance of love, kind of from how you experience it. It takes like a while to get this orientation, but ultimately it's a process of discovery. And so in order to allow that process of discovery to happen and that relationship to unfold as a result of that process of discovery, you're not looking to name it everything. You're like, it's a quiet connection. It's a mom pick me up. It's a belief and then receiving. It's sort of the opposite of prescriptive. And so when we look at this 10 of Swords, 10 of Wands energy, and the Ace of Pentacles, like, there has to be a death of the old priority structures that kind of like are unconscious to a certain degree. And this is really this moment of like saying, I'm going to stop looking at everything that is coming at me, and I'm going to look within, find this power that makes me impenetrable, and then stand in my strength and be an example and a light, and let the expression of God through me be something that, you know, is unique and in co-creation and comes through in any number of like ways. It can be art, it can be anything. But ultimately there's a peace and there's a strength and there's a gaining peace and a gaining strength to the process of interacting with this energy. And if there isn't that, then you still have some learning to do. There's something else going on, and you've got, it's somatic, you're going to feel it. And that's kind of difficult as a reader to not be able to give you more than like you have to feel for it in the dark. Is, you know, that's hard. But the Ace of Pentacles basically says no one's going to take your path. You are created for a path, no one's going to take it away. That path is actually you and this creator, like living together in co-creation and in family forever. It's your siblings, it's your tribe, it's your planet, it's your people, it's your soul cluster. I mean, there's a million ways of describing that. Like there's that story with the elephant, and you know, all the different religious leaders were that blind go into a room, feel a different part of the elephant, come out and describe, you know, well, God has a trunk. Somebody else says, no, God's a tail. Like, and this is this way in which like the substance of God is for everybody. The way it is expressed is unique through each and every individual. To take that away is to take someone's God away. To take someone's God away is to take their power away and to subjugate that person. And so your path is an infinite path. Your creator never abandoned you, and your creator is never going to abandon you. We are in a period of time where, you know, Jesus would describe it as being tricked into a dream. Tricked into a dream and being told you are what you aren't and believing it. And being stuck in that dream and not being able to wake up. That's how Jesus describes it. But ultimately, when you do wake up, your path is still there. It never went anywhere. And it's infinite. And it's in co-creation with something that... And Jesus says this is the greatest love story of all time. It makes you... It plugs you into an all-powerful, like, completely benevolent, yes, individual relationship with God. The story that is created around that is created in co-creation with your, like, through your relationship, through your interactions. And Jesus is like, one of the reasons why he came through so strong with the mission that he co-created with his Father was because he realized that people needed the container of a human body in order to like get the mirroring and understand how to interact with this substance. Like he kind of, when he says like, I'm the way and the light, he's kind of meaning like the example is, like, I'm the example, now follow my example, do as I do. The kingdom of heaven, you bring it to the earth. You know, you have the kingdom of heaven within, and your God within is the one true God for you. And how you express that one true God, that substance of God, is how we bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. That's the recipe, and that path never goes away. And so you're involved in a process where you haven't been abandoned, you haven't been rejected, and God did not ever leave you. But God did not want you believing in a doctrine that was going to destroy you. And so there's this period of like death of God at the foot of the cross that we all kind of have, where you're serving this story and you're serving the story and you're believing the story, and everything goes into believing the story and your heart is all there. You get to the foot of the cross and you're like, no, wait, God is dead. That means that the story wasn't true. That's an existential crisis. That's nihilism. That's a horrible moment. But when you pick your head up again and you look out and you think, okay, well, that wasn't the story, then you actually have the opportunity to truly encounter God. And that true encounter with God, with the true God that is not prescriptive, that is not contained in someone else's story about what your creator is. Someone else's story about what your creator is not that's not a relationship. That's your reaction to a story and your obedience and belief poured into the structure of story. That is not God, because God is a relationship. The substance of God is relational. The expression of God is relational. And so, okay, that was so powerful. I kind of like lost, like Lisalee, I like lost the channel because that was like really, really powerful. I don't even remember like where that was, but basically, you know, what it is to sort of like, this is like, this is this nihilism. This is this foot of the cross. Like, I don't see a God anywhere. What's the story? Give me a story. I need a story to hold God. And, you know, and that's where Jesus is like, well, I'll just give my story. It's like good enough. Like, it's fine. They're going to butcher it. They're going to manipulate it. They're going to turn me. They're going to use my anointing because I'm going to show up anytime someone says my name, and they're going to spin a lie around it. Of course, that's what we're dealing with right now. And, you know, to understand that, you know, Jesus is your sibling is to understand that, like, Jesus considers you, like, on the level with, there's no higher, that's not the way that it is. And so I can look at Jesus and be like, dude, I don't think you should be letting your name be, like, effectively used by people who are espousing, like, horrible doctrines, to which he would say, like, it's not going to be used unless it's in alignment with healing, and I want to heal the world, and I'm going to do the healing. I don't care about the stories, and, you know, I'm irrespective of, like, what agenda you want to, like, pull. You know what I mean? Like, there's this really cool thing that's going on here. But that's created in relationship. Jesus created everything that he gave you in the way of a story through relationship with his Father. That's a co-creation that he brought into the world with his being, like, and the power of, like, what that fusion actually does for the world. You have that same amount of power and that same ability. And the second coming is we're all messiahs. And the message that we bring into the world is that we found God, and in co-creation now know how to bring that God into the world. And we've gotten our ancient magic. We've unlocked the portion of the DNA that has been, you know, dead or whatever it ends up being, and we can walk on water if that's the co-creation that our gods want to use, like, what they created us for to bring into the world. Like, we're all created to do something different. Jesus had, like, kind of a very neat, like, important role where his miracles needed to look a certain way in order to get a certain kind of attention. There were other miracles. People were working in co-creation with other gods, but he had the thing. And we know what the thing is because we know when it's not there. And so when we talk about false gods, first of all, the idea of a false god is given to us by the false god. Things that are not the God within, things that are the substance of God in the world from other people that we're meant to help, like, we're meant to use to help us identify the substance of God within. That stuff, we need to interact with it. And sometimes we need to go down roads that are stupid because we need to have, like, this one little thing, and then we get it and we take it back. And again, we will go down roads that are wrong for a really long time because the substance of God is recognizing the substance of God and other people on that road. And we'll get all the way to the end of that road before the substance of God will say, turn around, tell them that this is the wrong road. I let you get all the way here because you see how fast you were? You see how you got to the end of the road first? Great. Awesome. Good job. Turn around. Tell them it's all a lie. If you let that moment, turn around, tell them it's all a lie, destroy your connection to the divine because it didn't fit the story of the road, then you're going to be like, you're going to feel that homesickness that is, like, unparalleled. When you realize that you're supposed to go down wrong roads, that what people create in the way of external structures of their expression of God you're meant to interact with that. There's God within and there's expression of God without, but just one of those is a relationship, and it's the relationship that is the one true God. And so this is a really, you know, it took a long time to get the last Jesus stuff out, but now that we're here, like, talk about, I knew that this was gonna, I, like, felt it, and I was like, I don't know how to convey this, you make me cry. Now that I've developed a tolerance to his anointing presence, like, in a positive way. Like, it doesn't make me cry. It's like, it was like getting used to an onion, like, you know, I mean that in the most loving way. He's got such a sweet spirit. But we all have you know, Jesus says, even, like, you know, he was the example, but we all have the capacity, and we're all meant to connect with the God within this 8th house, a major chain, the mysteries of life, personal power. Like, this is really where we connecting with our creator, the God within, through relationship. And we'll get a little bit more on that, is where we get our personal power, start to understand the mysteries of life, and affect major change. Boom, right there. And how do you recognize God? Well, you know, this is that moment where we have to sort of get to that divine, feminine, receptive, spiritual place where we're able to hear and listen and feel. But there's more to this. Let's see how I'm doing on time. I'm amazing. I'm doing so good on time. So let's see, where are we? So we got through, how do you recognize it? Center of gravity. It becomes your center of gravity. The more you connect with it, the more you're able to identify what is not it. And the more you're able to identify what is not it, the more justice that you bring into the world. It becomes like a full-time job of serving. But it's like that John Green, I think his name's John Green, quote, you know, love is like falling asleep a little at a time and then all at once. So like there's a way in which this investment is like really slow until like it's all the way, you know. So it's about finding this power, the center of gravity, the God within, and then you're embodying the God within in a certain way. So let's just take a look at that, because when we say that the substance of God is intelligent, we mean your creator knows who you are and everything you've gone through and has been there all along and has never left you and is craning towards wanting to communicate with you, but will never interrupt you or yell at you to pay attention to it the way the externals will. And that's like this trick. I mean, I don't like that rule, but there's got to be a reason. Your creator wants you to find them. In some ways, you're created to find them. In some ways, you're created to see them. To have that sight. And I'm thinking about the child's parent relationship again. You know, like that's a really unique type of mirroring. And so, you know, the parent isn't sitting there all day long going, this is what you're going to think of me. This is the experience you're going to have of me. And any experience that you have that is not like that, you know, like that's a narcissist, that's abusive. So this is like the good parent who says, hey, let's play on the floor. You're going to get to know me, because I'm going to spend all my time with you and I love to teach you things and you're my favorite little person. And we're like, it's a totally different thing. If it wasn't a process of discovery, like think about the little kid who learns who their parent is by interaction, or doesn't at all. I mean, a lot of us were neglected, but ultimately, you know, your creator wants to get to know you the way a good parent would, which is to spend their time with you, to teach you, to hold, you know, to get you, there's all that stuff. And so like spending that time with the God within, it takes a certain discipline. There's like a little bit of planning involved, because the externals are going to scream like, pay attention to me. There's actual structures in place to interrupt you from ever getting to this point. So the seventh house, you know, like the agreement of it's sort of interesting with organized religion and why it's effective and why we all are searching for belief systems in common, because we want there to be a consensus and we want there to be a truth, and we want there to be a place for faith in the world. So bringing God into the world through us in co-creation is about consensus creating. It is about creating God on earth as it is in heaven. It is about bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth. So there's a part of this that is about consensus. But ultimately, so first you have to understand that like the one true God is a relationship. Jesus is saying he understood that people needed a person to kind of connect to, like cognitively, in order to actually make that connection relationship. And so there's a way in which we're attached to, well, like Jesus is like, it's a shapeshifter, it's a substance of, you can put it in almost any container, so long as what you're perceiving is in alignment with your creator is operating through it to be perceived. And so your creator is going to like inspire you. And consensus is kind of the name of the game in terms of giving the power of God on earth as it is in heaven, like to the, like bringing it through. It's divesting in systems of oppression that keep us from ever making these connections. And there is a cooperation and an agreement and an agreeing that needs to happen between siblings, basically. So there's something to this being partially, like, because Jesus is saying, like, yeah, I figured out who my father was, and I walked around with that for like 10 years. And it wasn't until a certain point when Jesus started to realize that, you know, there needed to be a consensus elsewhere in order for that power to be able to be useful upon the earth in a way, and that he was going to have to do something to bring light to the fact that this even existed, and that this personal relationship with God could even happen in any way. That was like the revolution right there. And so knowing that you can have a personal relationship with God, understanding that that God within does not have the structures of what you've been taught God is, that's the death at the foot of the cross. You want that death to happen. And stepping into what it is to be anchored in the substance of God, right? It's coming at it at full bore as a relationship. It's a relationship. And so like, how do you, and this is this Magician card with Justice here and the Page of Wands. Part of it is like an integration. You're taking the substance of God within. Now like this is a whole spiritual thing where like, we don't really know what we are. A lot of people like don't know that like we're containers for things in a really big way. A lot of what we do is host, believe it or not. We drive the car, we are the consciousness, we are the observer, and we have all the agency. But there is so much in the way of, like, I could go on like a huge tangent about the stuff that experiences life through our eyes. What do you think that we are as a planet? Like, we watch TV and we watch these lives and we study these lives that are created to show something, to make us feel something, to give us a context of, to bring a level of consciousness to expand that consciousness. We watch TV. We're story people. What is our place in the universe? Our perception. Like, think of it like a projector onto a movie screen. But there's an audience there. Believe it or not, there's an audience there. This is kind of why you're so important and why we're in this like place of like where the stories are creating the consciousness. It's like the universe uses this part of its brain to do something very important. We're super guarded. And so when you think about what it is to sort of interact with the substance of God and bring God in through your perspective and infiltrate the collective consciousness, you know, like it's not supposed to be a one size fits all. Like the consensus that we're supposed to have is that God is good. God is there and is the source by which we're getting all of this power and creativity and the ability, and to basically be encouraging people to connect with their inner God as the one true God, and not really getting involved in the process of how they express it, because they might create a false road. And a lot of people might go on that false road, but there's going to be one person who gets to the head of that false road first, sees that it's false, turns around and starts warning the others. And then again, a lot of this is a labyrinth and traveling and different schools of fish to try to learn different things. Ultimately, the substance of God is going to move each individual in a different way. And our job is to be hands off. Jesus is saying, like, to know that God is the author and finisher of your faith is to freaking step back and know that the same is true for everyone else, and that every book is different, and that every story comes out different, and you want a library of diversity. And so does the God that created you to be so unique that your perspective is really unique, and how you saw God is really unique. That doesn't mean that you're not describing the color red to somebody who knows their inner God is the color red too. Like, again, there's a consensus thing, but it's not about uniformity. It's really, really interesting. It's about expansion of consciousness. And so we have access to this. We are the creators of meaning. We're formed for our consciousness creating ability. But we're not meant to have such a miserable time of it. I have such a cough. I have to like keep on coughing. I should have a lozenge somewhere. I don't know. I had an upper, this is like private, but I feel like if I'm going to be coughing in your ear, I had like a upper respiratory thing go on. It's just like lingering. So when we look at the Chariot and the Page of Cups, we are seeing this, the first house, who you are, your desires, your actions, and the Ten of Cups. This is such a beautiful process. This is not being punished by contrast into learning, you know. The misery comes from the story structure that is imposed by this freaking monster here, honestly. This is a story structure that is extracting meaning through like supplying suffering. Like, it's a very specific way of farming for wisdom. that this particular God is very invested in. And it's as above, so below. You can tell that upper management is upper management because look around. We're not blind. We can see when the God that's in the world is not one that is we think God that is in the world is the all-powerful, the thing that has power, you know, the structures that force your attention. That's not a good God that people are serving. We know it, we feel it. It's and that's not your creator. So when you start to connect with your creator, you're stepping out of the story structure, which is not, no, let me be corrected because I'm being corrected. The story structure will collapse with the divestment of faith in it. But that's a process that happens over time, like let Caesar have Caesar or whatever. Because the empire will fall of its own accord when you are redirecting your energy to that God within and bringing God into the world. You're bringing in structures that are organic and natural and nourishing and good. You're creating roads for people. Like people are meant to kind of follow you and form a consensus, but they're also meant to have a very individual like way of interpreting every aspect of it. You're creating a story together of what God is like. This is the mirror thing. There's so much here that is like almost impossible for me to channel correctly, because I will tell you, working with Jesus, if you've tried to read A Course in Miracles, like this is very hard. This is not like the easiest person to channel. Like he gives me stuff that I'm like, nope, can't, don't have, no way I can freaking explain that. But when we are looking at what it means to sort of like be in contact with our creator is us. Like our creator will inform us of who we are, what we're created for, how beautiful we are, that they love us. Look at what we made. Let's put it on the fridge. Like there's a parental thing here. Like, oh, let's rock you to sleep and let's heal your like wounds. This is a beautiful, like fulfilling experience. This is a 10 of Cups experience. This is an experience that makes you feel like you are loved. And you are loved so well that every other piece of love that you get in the world from the outside, all the externals providing love, you are so loved that all the externals providing love, it's extra. It's not this place of lack and need. That's because of the story structure that's there to form our wisdom in a really twisted way. We are here to have this experience of co-creation with our creator, to bring a consciousness to the universe that is uniquely ours, in co-creation with our God, and the gods that created the peoples, that expression in consciousness is their co-creation with you. There's something really beautiful that's like very natural. So you're going to just do that very naturally and very easily by forming this relationship and investing in this relationship. But it's here for your emotional fulfillment. The idolatry of romantic love, the idolatry of like the perfect family, the idolatry of the perfect community, the idolatry of the perfect doctrine, that is not going to be emotionally fulfilling. You know, hoarding money, not emotionally fulfilling. This is the relationship that we're being misdirected and want. But once this is satisfied, everything else is extra, and there isn't that feeling of the void and the lack there. And so there's a real incentive here, and this is a rewarding process. Jesus is like, all that you're doing, your subversive revolutionary act, that doesn't mean that you aren't going to be prompted to make change in the world by showing up and being the change in the world. Like 100,000,000,000,000%, that is exactly what this is. But the way in which you're being told to connect with the divine within and to connect with that voice and is to turn to it, like to know that there's an intelligence watching you, perceiving through your experience and guiding you as much as it possibly can without being a story structure that imposes itself upon you and messes with the consciousness that's being organically created. Turn to that voice. Like, hey, I need you to start to be louder than you are. I need you to connect with me. I need to start to see examples of you in the world. I need to feel you and your presence as being palpable. You're meant to start communicating in that way and make this relationship. And as you do that, you're divesting your faith from the structure, and that's naturally freeing you. You're probably going to be inspired in co-creation with this creator to go into the world and be the God in this world, and it's going to be in opposition to whatever that structure is in one way or another. And, you know, in terms of like the path that is not gone anywhere, it's there, it's for you. You're learning who you truly are. The structure shadows are disappearing under the power of who you truly are. Your path has never been anywhere. You're just coming into like, you're eternal. You're eternal, and you're all powerful, and you have all kinds of abilities at your beck and call once you sort of really like are in alignment and co-creation with your creator. Like you're bringing all that stuff in. That's the walking on water. However that manifests for you, it's going to come from your desire. Desire and alignment, and that like gets to be creation in the world, which is, that's what we're talking about. This is a process of taking your heart out of being disappointed that the world sucks as much as it does, and needing it to be better in your own right and the way that you see it. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be inspired by the divine to see things clearly and act on it, to see things clearly and speak on it, to see things clearly and lead by example. Yeah, of course you are, 100%. But you're not fighting with the structure anymore, trying to tell it to love you. You're gonna end that. It's not going to love you. It can't love you. Impossible. And so, you know, this isn't really about false gods. You know, this is about connecting with the true God for you. And so, I think this is, I thought there was going to be more parts to this. Let me see what else wants to come through. How are we doing on time? We're so good on time. Let's get some of these. I have this deck out from earlier. And so we're going to get a message. So, you know, I think the only, like, the foggy part is, like, I'm not really sure how to tell you to connect. It's a somatic thing. Like, I figured out how to do it, connect with my inner God sort of energy, and it's like weird, I gotta say. Like, I can tell that it's a new center. It's like riding a bike. Riding a bike, first thing you do is you pick up the bike and you're like, how does this work? Okay, I'm supposed to put my foot here, my other foot there, and like then I kind of balance and thrust, like whatever, forward. At first it makes no physical sense, and there's no way to like force the physical sense. It's almost like your higher self, your creator within is saying, like, I'm going to be the parent who holds the back of the seat on the bike as you learn to ride the bike. And there are those of you who haven't learned how to ride a bike, and I you know, I don't want to leave you out of this conversation because it's a miracle that I did. I wish I could find a better example. Jesus, you want to give me something? Swimming is another one of these examples where, like, it seems physically impossible until you're just somehow doing it. Riding a bike seems physically impossible until you're somehow doing it. What other examples? Not everybody's like had swimming and bikes. Like when a math problem clicks, you can't see your way through it, and you've done the check 15 times, and all of a sudden it appears and you're like, oh, I did, this is so easy. Like there's this really interesting way in which, like, what we're being shown is your inner God will guide you, and at a certain point it's just going to click, and then you're fully plugged in, and there's nothing stopping you at that point. And so it's a wobbly, practicey kind of thing at first, but then it becomes automatic. You never lose that center of gravity again. So, like, let it be a little bit wobbly at first. You know, there's a combination of seeing God externally, you know, God coming at you, like, you know, through whatever means you access God, to sort of help you with this navigation process internally. But ultimately, again, you're creating it as you go along. Don't ever let anyone tell you who your own creator God is. It's going to be so unique. Have you answered your deepest calling is the bottom of this deck right here. Don't you just like love when the cards speak so clearly? You know, so like your inner God has been calling to you your entire life. And yeah, this came through probably the last Akashic Records meeting. Where is that from? Yeah. When you are crying so hard, and you finally like find this place at the end of the crying that feels like you're being held. It's like you land in it somehow. And there's like a peace that comes over you. Like this presence is literally always there holding you. It's only when you are too tired not to feel it. Like, yeah, so like it's the baby who is crying for its mother that doesn't realize its mother is holding it. And it's almost like my inner God is almost saying to me, and this is my example, but like when I get like, yeah, and Jesus is saying it's pretty good, you know, when we get to this place where we feel held at the end of a huge crying fit, it's because we've gotten too tired to believe that we're like, it's like we're told that, yeah, like, how do I get this right? Being told that the baby's crying, I want my mommy. The mother is holding the baby. the baby believes that the mother is not there until it's too tired to hold up that belief anymore, and it just falls asleep on the mom. And that's that moment of like when you know that you're held at the end of a crying jag. It's really interesting. So it's like it's always there, and it's also always calling you. And so your God within is always kind of like getting your attention. Like the stuff that you're interested in spiritually is that God within being like, hey, there's something really cool there that can help lead you to me. When you come up against like, you know, dogmas that are horrible after you believed them for years, and you're just like, oh, why did I go there? You know, like it's because that inner God was said to you, like, that's not real. Like, you know, this is an energy that has always been guiding your spiritual journey from day one. It's just how much of an ear do you have to listen? And so like, so in order to, you know, break some of this epigenetic programming against this type of seeking, you know, in order to like allow the divine feminine energy of reception to like rise from within so that we can connect in this way. This is divine feminine magic, connecting to your source and then having that power be brought through you in a way that creates life. Sometimes it's co-creating life, co-creates a whole bunch of other things. We all have the power to do this. Ancestral patterns, healing, rewriting the future. So this is really cool in the sense that like, some of the stuff we're going against our programming hardcore. We're hardwired for the freedom. And so there's always this fight between hardwired for the freedom and the programming that's trying to co-opt that freedom. And so we are in this process in terms of like what it means to seek that God within. Part of that is seeking the God everywhere else. Like we're going to find like the manifestation of the truth of the substance of God is in other theologies, because it just comes out of different people in different ways. And so you're just looking for what you resonate as true. Resonate as true. That's going to be like, that's like tuning in. And then it's like, that's really interesting. It catches my attention. It resonates as true. This is a clue. This clue is going to direct me to the next clue and the next clue and the next clue. And interacting with those clues that your inner God gives you with the knowledge that your inner God, A, loves you, B, wants to communicate with you, knows you, created you for a purpose, and is like literally right there. You can begin to rewrite the future and do this healing for yourself and like everyone who came before who has been disconnected. What does it mean to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth? What does it mean to have the graves open up and the resurrection of those that have died with those that are living? Those that are disconnected being able to reconnect because you're showing them how to, because you're connecting with the God within, bringing that God into the world and making it accessible for those that are disconnected. It's powerful stuff. Your vibration is rising. You are the oracle. Look at this. Look at this. I love it. So, let me hold it up. I mean, I don't even need to speak. This image is saying so much. If this isn't an example of what you're created to sort of embody in terms of like what's co-created, like you're getting really close to being the embodiment of your highest self and creator, and having your incarnation, again, that's perspective, be what you bring, like what you're able to like use as, it's like an alchemy of like your perspective of like living in the world, experiencing things and having all of these interactions with everything and sensory stuff, and your creator moving through that perspective with a purpose of some expression of God on the earth that's supposed to come through you. This is the oracle. The oracle is basically the channel for the divine. All you're doing is you're channeling your highest self. You're channeling the God within. You're embodying that God within and bringing it into the world and helping people connect to their source energy. And again, this brings God right in. Things are changing at a cellular level, deep healing. So like, we don't even know what the power is. We have glimpses. We've seen people do miracles. Everyone can say like science and, you know, miracles, garbage, except that like there's all these like weird little like freakish examples like all over the place. The person who lived in a cave their entire life never ate anything, and like that's documented. Like the person that, I mean, like that's not an example, but like there are, if you go digging, sort of verifiable science around aspects of spirituality where you're like, okay, miracles sometimes. Remote viewing, oh, didn't know, but that seems to have some, credibility. There are these ways in which magic makes itself known. The sacred, you know, interrupts the profane, and that's how you can tell the difference between what's real and what's not. So we don't, you know, this divine feminine magic, which is buried alive under structure head over here, and that story structure, as we begin to unearth this divine feminine energy and allow it to manifest, we're going to find out what our magic is. Our magic is an extension of what our creator is created of, created for, that field of like existence, and how it wants to express its consciousness is through its children's, like that's like really all this is. So its magic is there for the taking and the using in alignment with our inner God. It's so complicated and so easy at the same time. But we can't, things are changing at a cellular level, deep healing. We're capable of miracles, each and every one of us. If one person can do it, like the 4, you know, documented cases, if there is verifiable stuff that that person can do, then you can do it too. It's just as much there for you as anyone else. And that's what your inner God would have you know, that tapping into your magic means manifesting that magic into the world. And there are people who know how to do it, and you can learn how to do it. And this is that process by which you gain access to that part of you that has this, and the divine feminine rises. And then we start healing. You know, it's like amazing. And so seeding the light, laying foundations, divine plan. Everything here is in co-creation with a lot of other, you know, how do I put this? We each have a source. Our source wants us to express uniquely through our perspective. We're being chosen for this. We each are chosen ones. Everyone's a chosen one. That perspective is useful to the consciousness of like the entire universe in one way or another, even if it's a really sad tragedy. But you have the power to make your perspective as expansive and as depthy and as interesting as you are able to show up for life. And you can show up for life a whole lot better in co-creation with your creator, who created you for a purpose that wasn't serving that story structure monster. Because it's not just the religions that this story structure imposes on people. You know, it's all about, it's basically, you know, killing that divine feminine energy so that we never get our source energy, and we always need a middleman in order to access the most nourishing thing that we could possibly need, which is that connection to the divine. So I think this is where we're going to end it. We are at an hour. Let's get a card that's like speaking from that place. And we'll end on this. So I hope that was helpful. So Jesus is, I think that's our last channeling Jesus. He's got the best, I mean, you know, this is something that was really hard to learn, but once I kind of got it, I'm starting to, like, literally, it took me, it was so many convoluted things to get me to even understand enough to be able to channel in the way that I have. It took, like, all kinds of stuff. So this is a process of discovery, and it's important to remember that. And it's important to remember that it's supposed to be fun, and you can't do it wrong. Even if you're going down on wrong road, there's still purpose in it, and that's a perspective thing. Oh, well, I love this. So this is where we're being left with Sisters of the Star Blossoms. Sisters of the Star Blossoms. Whilst we each take our own journey to divine bliss and truth, we have soul friends that love us unconditionally and wish to help us find our way home with the least suffering and greatest joy. When we allow ourselves to be helped, we help others too. It is a spiral of support and love that wishes to connect more with you now. Couldn't have said it better myself. So let's find a consensus that is completely free of story structure controls, so that we can begin to really embody what it means to connect with our inner God, and through the co-creation of our expression, bring that God into the world with great power. So I'm going to leave it there. Jesus was great to work with. Drop questions. I try to get to them as much as I can. Sometimes I fail, but hopefully we'll get to all the questions. All right. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks for joining me here.